Man, it's getting really spicy in the National Football League. Trades galore, okay? Guys changing teams. We're only in the preliminary stages of free agency. It hasn't even opened yet. The new league year doesn't start until Wednesday. This is the quote-unquote tampering period, and shit's already going crazy in the National Football League. A lot of big names still out there left to be signed, but teams are making it rain like Jacksonville right now. They're doing what the New England Patriots did last year and just spending that bread up, running the check up. We'll get to all of that. Brady's back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. And so many other topics that we're going to get to today on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by the Card Collector Series. Join me, your man, Louie T, on my journey back into the card collecting space with the Card Collector Series on YouTube. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 245th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Man, oh man, this thing is just crazy. And the NFL, I remember when I used to bitch and complain and moan about how the NFL trade deadline was so lame and that there was no excitement at the trade deadline. And that's not what we're doing right now. We're in the infant stages of free agency, and it's always haywire this time of the year for the NFL. But their free agency period is starting to feel like the NBA, where every year in the NBA, because it's an arms race, everyone's positioning, jockeying for position, and trying to put their team together that gives them the best chance to win a chip. Because without superstars and without a roster that's either top heavy or super deep, you don't stand a chance in the NBA. And really, you need superstars in the NBA. So you're offloading all kinds of salary, creating all kinds of space for 2 years down the road when this guy's going to be a free agent or that guy's going to be a free agent. In the NFL, it's starting to feel similar to that now, where this team's going all in and they're trading for this guy and they're trading for that guy and they're signing this guy. And it didn't used to be this way. There didn't used to be all of these trades. At least it didn't feel like it to me. I could be wrong. And there could not be an uptick in trades. I know one thing's for sure. We didn't used to see as many quarterbacks changing teams. That's for sure. Not trading for quarterbacks and, big name wide receivers and this, that, and the third being changed in terms of teams and giving up draft capital. And so I just think the league is in a different place. Teams are going for it. The cap is definitely a huge part of decision-making when it comes to what teams ultimately have to do. You talk about that Amari Cooper trade, for instance. The Cowboys only really netting, what did they get? A sixth round, second and a sixth or something like that for Amari Cooper. Whatever it wasn't a lot. And a lot of people were like, what the hell was that? What kind of compensation for Amari Cooper is that? Well, it's the money. The Browns are going to take on that contract. They're not also going to have to give up a bunch of draft capital if they're going to eat the contract, and they're going to take that off the Cowboys' hands and off their books, which is what the Cowboys ultimately wanted. Because, look, I've said this before when it comes to when a team approaches a player. When you approach a player about taking a pay cut or you approach a player about restructuring, you better be prepared to cut that player if they say no. Because there is the chance that that guy can say, no, I'm not taking a pay cut. You crazy? You got to be prepared to say, look, if you don't take this pay cut, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And if that player's like, sure, okay, then do that. I'll go get my money elsewhere. Then that's what you have to be prepared to do. In some instances, you're not prepared to do that. Like the Cowboys went to Tank Lawrence and they said, hey, we need you to restructure. And he's like, I ain't restructuring shit. You better take that shit to Dak or Zach Martin. I'm not restructuring a damn thing. And they weren't prepared to cut him. So they was like, damn, okay, cool, fine. We'll go hit Dak and Zach Martin up. And they did. But in certain instances, when you go to a dude and say, hey, you can seek a trade. Once you tell a guy they can seek a trade, the shit is over. It's over. Either you're going to ultimately have to cut them because nobody called you with a real offer, or you're really going to trade them. But there's no coming back from that. When you tell someone, go seek a trade, you're fine, go out there and see what you can get. like you're telling me you don't want me anymore. Okay. You're essentially telling me I'm not valuable enough for you to take off the market. And you're telling me go find a suitor that will give us what we're looking for in exchange. And then you can go. So the Cowboys essentially told Amari Cooper, hey, we want to re-sign Michael Gallup. So we can't afford both of y'all. So we're going to try to trade you. And if we can't trade you, we're going to cut you. They were looking for someone to take that, $22 million, cap hit off of the Dallas Cowboys books. And the Browns said, hey, we'll do it. We'll do it. So in doing that, you're not going to get a first round pick, 2 1s or 1 and a 2 and a 4 for Amari Cooper, which is what you probably should get for a guy of his caliber. You're not going to get that because they got to eat that money. So I thought it was interesting seeing a lot of people's reactions to that deal. AJ Brown was one of the people that said, damn, Amari's worth more than that. And I'm like, bro, you don't get the logistics of everything. You don't understand how the inner workings of a trade take place, how all that stuff happens and works. But I get it. I understand when you see the price tag that the Browns paid for Amari Cooper, you go, what? That's it? So it's been wild. I mean, literally last week and into the weekend, we had the Russell Wilson trade, the Carson Wentz trade, the Khalil Mack trade, and then Amari Cooper trade. This was all before we even got to the tampering period of free agency. So just to think, that's how we started it. Now this thing has kicked off and we're just getting started. This thing is bananas. And sandwiched in between all of those trades and the start of free agency in this tampering period was Tom Brady quietly putting out an Instagram post saying, hey, I'm back, essentially. So, I mean, this shit is crazy. The NFL is off the rails right now with its activity. But that's the way they love it. Like March Madness is supposed to be dominating the conversation, and the NFL is like, you thought you were about to dominate. We don't take any time off. Okay. You might get us, you might be able to sneak us in May or June when nothing's going on, early July. You might be able to sneak us then. But right now, March and April, when we get to the draft, you don't stand a chance. So NFL doing that thing that they like to do, which is one up every other organization out there with their activity, and they're doing it again. They did it again as we get into free agency. So that's where I want to start with today's show. But before I do that, I let me get sentimental real quick because I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But for those of you who are not aware, I hit 20K over the weekend, and it happened so fast. Like I got stuck on 19.7, and I was just there for a while, and it was okay. I was like, look, this has been my journey. You know what I mean? I wouldn't trade my journey for anything. Sure, would I have liked to have gotten to 20K in 2 years? Absolutely, but that wasn't my journey. And so nothing that I had gotten was given to me. I had to earn everything the hard way. So getting to 19.7 and then just struggling to get to 20K, it was only fitting to me. But what I did not expect was for this just explosion to happen once I got to 19.8. And it just literally took off from there. And it went from 19. I was like 19.8 for 2 seconds, hit 19.9, and I blinked twice and I was already at 20K. So I was going to have this whole rollout where I was going to talk about, 20K, and it was coming down the pipeline and this, that, and it just literally before I could even get anything in place like that, it happened. And I couldn't be more thrilled and ecstatic because, again, when I first started the Louie T Network, I set a number of goals for myself. And, the milestones were 1, 5, 10, and 20. And, I was probably the most happiest when I hit 1 because from 0 to 1 took the longest of any time for any amount of subscribers that I've gotten to. The time from 0 to 1,000 was like 4 years. It felt like it might've even been slightly less than that, but it was a long time. And then from 1 to 5, it wasn't that long. From 5 to 10 wasn't all that long. From 10 to 20 wasn't all that long. But from 0 to 1,000 was like, because you're building it from scratch. I mean, literally you're starting at the bottom and you're working your way up. And it's a grassroots effort. I didn't buy any subs. I didn't do a ton of advertising. I didn't do anything to help, put this thing on the fast track. I literally did this grassroots effort style. Do the video, someone watches it, they share it with a buddy, or they tell someone, hey, you should check this guy out. And eventually it caught on. And here we are today, almost a decade later. Yes, 10 years it took me to get to 20,000 subs, but I wouldn't change my journey for anything. And I want to thank each and every single one of you for helping me get to the point that I'm at right now. And we're far from done. This path that I'm on has a long way to go. And this is just one of the stops of many on this journey that I'm on. But again, I wouldn't be here without you guys. So I want to thank each and every single one of my subs, every single one of you who have supported the Louie T Network, whether you've been here for the full 9 and some change years, you've been here for 7 years or 5 years or 4 years, or you just got here 2 months ago. Whatever the case may be, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for helping the Louie T Network become what it's become. And I want to thank you in advance for where you're going to help me go, because without you, none of this exists. So 20K, we've hit it. I'm going to celebrate it because this is a big milestone for me. For some people, they hit 20 and they don't even blink. For me, it took me a long time to get here. So I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to milk this. But then I'm going to continue to move on. All right. You're not going to hear me talk about this a whole bunch because that's not my style. But I do want to acknowledge 20,000 subscribers because it is a milestone for me. And again, this wasn't attainable without you. So thank you to all of you out there. And hopefully it won't take us that much longer to get to the next 20,000 or the next 30, because the next big milestone for me is 50. So hopefully it won't take us as long to get to 50 as it did to 20. But whatever the case may be, I'll be here every step of the way. And I hope you will be able to say the same as well. So once again, thank you for helping the Louie T Network join the 20K club. So with that said, let's jump into today's show. And of course, we start today's show off with the same thing we start every Louie T Network podcast off with: a gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T Double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, free agency, it's underway. We're in the tampering period, but we're seeing a lot of deals being agreed to in principle. And I said this on the Washington show that a lot of you will see a little bit later on. I will upload that after we're done with this podcast. But I've said this on that show, and I'll say it again here, that you generally don't see guys reneging on deals that are in place in principle. Now, we have seen that in the past. So not all of these deals, none of these deals that we're hearing about being agreed to in principle are official. Nothing becomes official until ink hits paper and then ink dries on paper. That won't happen until Wednesday at the earliest for these teams and these players and their agents and things of that nature. However, it's rare to see a guy agree in principle to a deal and then back out and say, no, I don't want to do that. We did see it with Anthony Barr a couple of years ago when he was going to sign with, a deal with the Jets, then decided he wanted to go back to Minnesota. So there is precedence there. But generally speaking, Christian Kirk isn't going to go back to Arizona and say, you know what? Decide to change my mind. I'm going to go back to Arizona, because the Cardinals aren't paying him $72 million. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to take this deal in Jacksonville, 4 years, $72 million, $18 million per. I feel really good about that. And he should. Man doesn't have a 1,000-yard season to his name, yet he's out here making, $18 million per. But they're paying him not for what he has done, but what they think he's going to do in the future. So you're seeing a lot of, and speaking of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Brandon Sheriff, we don't know the parameters of that deal yet, but Brandon Sheriff is going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. They signed Christian Kirk to a 4-year, $72 million deal, as I just mentioned. Foye Oluokun has already signed with them at the linebacker position, a guy that I really liked from the Atlanta Falcons. He's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. And the Jaguars are not done. They're continuing the stockpile. They just signed Evan Ingram to a 1-year, $9 million deal that can get up to $10 million. So the Jaguars are getting targets for Trevor Lawrence. They're protecting Trevor Lawrence. They've already brought back their left tackle, or right tackle. I think he's at right tackle now. Robinson. So, look, this is a team that is going to remake and reshape and remodel their organization around their star quarterback that they spent the number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence around. And I couldn't be happier to see that happen because I think the kid is super talented. Now he needs a supporting cast that's going to help him get to where he ultimately needs to go. So they're doing that in Jacksonville. They got the cap space. It's crazy because it seems like Jacksonville spends money all the time, yet they always seem to have money. They always seem to have draft capital. Like, when does Jacksonville ever run out of money? Every 2 years, it seems like Jacksonville's in the same spot. Hey, Jacksonville's got $77 million of cap space. And I'm like, didn't they just spend like $80 million on a guard that didn't work? Like, what are we doing here? How did they get this money again? But they always find themselves in this position. So here we are again with the Jaguars spending money like they printed out there in Duval. As we sit here, more moves are being made. More teams are being aggressive, going after it. None more so than the Chargers in that AFC West. I've talked about the Chargers. We talked about them, and I said all they need is a cornerback to make that cipher complete out there defensively. And I said, look, there are a couple of guys that are noteworthy. J.C. Jackson, the Patriots, I thought made a mistake by not franchise tagging J.C. Jackson. But again, they put themselves in this position by spending all the money that they did in free agency last year. They didn't have any money for J.C. Jackson, so they couldn't franchise tag him or give him the long-term deal that he was looking for. So they let him walk. He's getting a monster 5-year, $82.5 million deal from the Los Angeles Chargers, who are going for it. They traded for Khalil Mack. They bring in J.C. Jackson now to pair with Asante Samuel Jr. And all of a sudden now that defense is lights out. And I've said this, and I said it before, and I'll say it again. We don't know what Brandon Staley is as a head coach. We right now he looks like an over-aggressive clown when he's making some of these decisions in game. That said, what you cannot doubt is what he can do with defensive talent when presented with it. We saw him make the Rams not only the number 1 defense, but a dominant number 1 defense in the league his last year in LA. And I think what he's about to do with this Chargers team is transform that defense into one of the best units in football with the acquisitions made with Khalil Mack and now J.C. Jackson. So that Chargers team becoming ever so dangerous. I still think they need to do something along the defensive line. They were not good enough against the run last season. They need to shore up that D-line, and that could happen in the draft. It doesn't have to happen in free agency. They can find guys that can help them stop the run in the draft, but that's the next priority on the list of defensive needs for the Chargers, is to find that guy that helps plug up the middle of that leaky run defense. But man, the Chargers are putting themselves squarely in the mix in that hellish AFC West division. I continue to talk about the arms race that is the AFC West. You're seeing teams load up in that division. Chargers continuing to stockpile talent as they try to make the postseason for the first time in 2 years. So that was another big move that just came down. And I'm going to have my phone next to me because, as I mentioned earlier in the show, things continue to happen as we sit here. But let's see. Washington defensive tackle Tim Settle to Buffalo on a 2-year deal. So he's gone. I didn't expect him to be back. Okay. Washington had been in touch with him. They wanted him back, but I knew because he feels like he can start in this league and he deserves more snaps. And I agree with that. And so I figured he was going to be gone. Mitchell Trubisky is the next big domino that I want to talk about because this is a guy that I told you was going to command a lot of free agent attention this offseason because of the lack of star power in the draft at the quarterback position, because of all of the big name quarterbacks essentially deciding that, all right, I'm going to stay put, and Aaron Rodgers staying put, and Derek Carr more likely than not staying put in LA with the Raiders. And, Russell Wilson did get traded. Carson Wentz did get traded, but the big names, were Watson. We're going to talk about him in a second. Watson, Rodgers, Wilson, and Carr. And Carr's going to stay put. Rodgers is going to stay put. Wilson's already been dealt. And so now Watson is a guy that we're going to talk about here in a second that I think it's really down to 2 places with him. And his situation is starting to gain a little bit of clarity. So we're going to talk about Watson here in a second. But the Steelers go after Mitchell Trubisky, and they get their guy And so they're going to transition away from Big Ben now to the Mitchell Trubisky era. And we'll see how this goes. He was looking for a new lease on life, the place where he could go and have a chance to be the most successful. So it came down to the Giants and the Steelers for Mitchell Trubisky's services. So that tells you that they do not believe in Daniel Jones. Despite what they've been saying about Daniel Jones, they've already said that they're not picking up the fifth-year option on Daniel Jones. And they're now trying to go after Mitchell Trubisky. All of this screams, we do not believe in Daniel Jones. So don't be shocked if the Giants fall in love with one of these quarterbacks in the draft. They've got 87 picks. Don't be surprised if they take one of these quarterbacks in this year's draft class. Like, the Giants are not content with their quarterback situation, nor should they be. And so Mitchell Trubisky was deciding between the Giants and the Steelers, and he looked at the two situations and he said, the Steelers give me the best chance to resurrect my career, win some football games, and really parlay this second opportunity into a sticking opportunity similar to Ryan Tannehill. Like, you don't get many of these, so you can't waste them. You can't take an opportunity to be, because I think when guys are first-round picks at the quarterback position, they take these opportunities for granted because they just think, I'll get another chance. When you're backing up a guy making $2.5 million, it hits you that, shit, I'm no longer that guy anymore. And at any point, this could be my existence in the NFL for the remainder of my career, is backing up somebody making peanuts when I think I'm better than that guy. Now, he's not better than Josh Allen, okay? But there will be instances where he'll be somewhere and there'll be a young guy there and you're like, this guy stinks. I'm better than him. But you're not the guy anymore. You've had your opportunity. This is his second chance. It may be his last chance to be a full-time starter in this league. So he's got to take advantage of it. He made the right decision. The Steelers are ready to win now. They've got talent on offense. They've got a dominant defense. They've got the best program in terms of the two teams that were vying for his services. The Giants are a mess. He made the right decision. Now let's see if the Steelers can get the most out of Mitchell Trubisky, act number 2. Happy for him landing in Pittsburgh. They didn't have to give up any draft capital to get him. They didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money or inordinate amount of money. Still don't know what the deal looks like. I know it's a 2-year deal. Don't actually know the money that's inside of that deal. But one thing's for sure, Steelers get a guy that is, to me, an upgrade over anybody on their roster. Dwayne Haskins, Mason Rudolph, all those guys stink. This guy's going to give you an opportunity to win football games. And remember, I said this before, I'll say it again because I'm a Mitchell Trubisky apologist, okay? Mitchell Trubisky has a winning record as a starter in this league. He's 29-21 over the 4 years he's been in this league as a starter. He can win you football games. He did it for the Bears. He can win you football games. It's not always the prettiest. He's not always the most consistent. But Mitchell Trubisky is capable of playing at a very high level. And if they surround him with the right parts and they don't ask him to do too much and they don't put too much on his plate and on his shoulders, they give him a strong defense. They find a way to fix that run game that was broken last year. And all of a sudden, the weapons around him start to flourish. Mitchell Trubisky can thrive in a place like Pittsburgh. So that, to me, is a really good landing destination for Mitchell Trubisky. Sticking with the quarterbacks making moves, Teddy Bridgewater is now in Miami as a backup to Tua Tagovailoa. You remember Jacoby Brissett was in that role last year. He's now a free agent. So now Teddy Bridgewater goes back home. He's from Florida, and he will back up Tua Tagovailoa. Won't be shocked to see Teddy Bridgewater in there at some point this year with Tua's injury history. Wouldn't be shocked to see him get in there and help them win some football games in the upcoming season. So that's another movement at the quarterback position. But speaking of quarterbacks, the big name, the big fish that still remains out there. No, I'm not talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. F Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay. As a matter of fact, the game of musical chairs is turning. And if Jimmy doesn't hurry up and pick a seat, he's going to end up being left without a chair and he's going to get cut by the San Francisco 49ers. Someone will sign him, obviously, but you want someone to trade for you because you want to feel wanted. The Colts right now are the only team really left needing a quarterback. After Deshaun Watson makes his decision, then another team that didn't get him, because to me, Deshaun Watson is down to two choices, New Orleans or Carolina. And he's always said he would like to play close to home. He's from Georgia. Remember, he went to school at Clemson, which is South Carolina. So the Panthers aren't that far away from, where he is beloved in South Carolina. He's from the Georgia area. So he would love nothing more than to go closer to home, and New Orleans gives him that. So I wouldn't be shocked if he chose New Orleans. To me, that's the better option of the two. Why? Because Carolina's a train wreck right now. And you don't know what's going to happen with that organization over the next 2 years. Their owner seems to be a little bit impatient, wants to win big, and wants to win now, and he's willing to do anything. But guys that are willing to do anything and don't want to sit and wait and let things develop, they seem to be the worst owners. And I'm not saying that David Tepper is the worst owner, but he seems like he's tracking towards being one of those very meddlesome, over-involved owners that thinks he's a GM and wants to do too much. And I could see Matt Rule, who hasn't been great, obviously, getting fired if they're not good next season. And so if you're Deshaun Watson, do you really want to walk into a mess like that where you could be looking at a brand new head coach and a new coordinator and a bunch of change and turnover just a year after you got there? Whereas New Orleans, they did the smart thing in the offseason with Sean Payton retiring. They just promoted from within. So all the continuity is there. Dennis Allen isn't going anywhere. Everyone is there. Carmichael isn't going anywhere. Everyone that was already in place is still there, in place, intact. Now, I think you're lacking some of the talent that you would like. I actually think Carolina has more talent offensively than that of the New Orleans Saints. However, if they get Michael Thomas back healthy, if Alvin Kamara is back to being the Alvin Kamara that we know and love, I like what they did with the young boy, Juwan Johnson at tight end. And if he can continue to develop, they've got some stuff in New Orleans. They showed us a couple of young boys out there at the receiver position, including Marquez Callaway, that's starting to emerge. They just need a number one to properly slot all those receivers. You had Marquez Callaway out there posing as a one. He's a number two. Okay. You had guys stepping up trying to be number twos. They're really number three. Traquan Smith is nobody's number two. He's really a number three. So if you can properly slot all these receivers by getting Michael Thomas back, all of a sudden the Saints don't look all that bad from a talent standpoint. Okay. Deontay Johnson just got tendered at a second round level. He may be back. Not Deontay Johnson. Deontay Harris just got tendered at a second round level. So he may be back in New Orleans. Gives you that speed and that guy that could be a game changer for you. So they've got some stuff in New Orleans. They'll continue to add to that mix. But if you go to New Orleans, they've got a dominant defense. They're ready to win now. They're in a division that isn't all that great with Tom Brady coming back. We're going to go there down the road here on the show. But you look at the dynamics of that division, he's going to end up, I think, in that division, NFC South. I didn't want him in the conference at all, to be honest with you. I wanted him to keep his ass in the AFC, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The Indianapolis Colts just requested to have access to Deshaun Watson, and the Texans said, "Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Are you really going to pick up the phone and call us and ask us to talk to Deshaun Watson? You really think we would trade his ass in the division?" Click up. Look, all you can do is ask, and the worst they can say is no, or they could bang on you, but who gives a shit? If you're the Colts, you got to ask, you got to know. Well, the answer is no. We're not trading him in the division. Hell, we really would prefer to not trade him in the conference. But again, if they got a sweet deal from somebody, like if the Dolphins had come up with a sweet deal, they'd have traded him to Miami. They don't give a shit about the conference thing. Like, don't ever allow your brain to start working in a manner that says, hey, they're not going to trade him because they don't want to keep him in the conference. They want the best deal possible. And if that comes from their own conference, they're probably not going to trade a guy that they see as a threat in their division. But in the conference, you get what you can get for a guy. So, and remember, Watson has a no trade clause. That's what always complicates matters with situations like this. When you got a guy with a no trade clause, he dictates where he goes. Similar to Russell Wilson, he dictated where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to Denver. So that's where he ended up being shipped off to. Deshaun Watson has a no trade clause. So, Washington fans out there. So let's talk about Watson's situation real quick. On Friday, I was out and with my mom and my wife and the kids, and we were at a restaurant, and all of a sudden Deshaun Watson pops onto the screen, and we find out he's not going to be charged criminally in any of the cases that have been brought to the grand jury. They've already made a decision. None of those warrant going to trial for, so he's not going to face criminal charges. So he comes out, makes a statement that he's vindicated, and when you trust God and you trust the facts and you know who you are, this, that, and the third, justice will prevail, this, that, and the third. And so he feels like his name has been tarnished in all of this, but he's going to now have a chance to rebuild his brand. Because, in this country, we say innocent until proven guilty, but it's usually, especially when it comes to anything regarding women, it's usually the opposite. You're guilty until you prove your innocence. Similar to Jeff Gladney, who was released by the Minnesota Vikings. He was just found not guilty of any wrongdoing in his situation, but the Vikings couldn't wait. When that happens, we're living in an era now where teams don't ask questions. They act first, ask questions last. Okay. So, Watson now has been cleared of any criminal wrongdoing. He may still face some issues in civil court, but the NFL is not really all that interested in the civil aspect of this. They were more interested in the criminal aspect of this. So sounds like Watson's off the hook. Now he's available to be shipped off. Teams kind of know where he sits in terms of his availability. So now that market is starting to ramp up. And so you get Washington fans saying, hey, did we act too fast on Wentz? No. Let's get one thing straight. His agent is the same agent that belongs to a linebacker / safety Landon Collins. So don't think for one second that when they were talking about Landon Collins, they didn't approach that same agent while in Indy, because this is when all this stuff went and took place. They were in Indy. They met with Landon Collins' agent, and they said, hey, we need Landon to take a pay cut. And his agent said, all right, I'm going to talk to Landon and I'll get back to you. They said, oh, but while we got you right here, you handled Deshaun Watson too, right? He's like, yeah, and we about to get that shit straight too. He was like, oh, okay, cool. That sounds good. That's right up our alley. So he says, okay, before you start, Deshaun's not interested in coming to Washington. So you can save the interest in, look, we respect the fact that you're interested. He doesn't want to come to Washington. Okay, cool. Well, get back to us on the Landon Collins front. Let us know if he's willing to take the pay cut, and we'll be in contact. He says, I will do that. I'll let you know what Landon says. So Landon said, hey, I'll take the pay cut to stay in Washington. And so he was willing to take the pay cut. Washington got that no. They went right back to the lab and said, all right, so Deshaun's, no, he's out. Russell Wilson is out. Aaron Rodgers is out. Derek Carr is out. What are we going to do? Jimmy Garoppolo's having shoulder surgery. What do we got left? There's Carson Wentz out there. Do we really want to do that? At this point, Ron, we don't have a choice. If we don't choose Carson Wentz, no one will choose us, and we'll look really damn bad. All right, make the deal. So they made the deal for Carson Wentz. So let's just get one thing straight. He didn't want to come here. Deshaun Watson wanted no parts of Washington, okay? So we didn't jump the gun, and had we just waited, we could be in the Watson sweepstakes right now. He didn't want to come here, and he's got a no-trade clause, which is what I've been talking about this entire process, is that he gets to dictate where he's going to go. And Washington was never on his radar, nor should it have been, okay? Nor should it have been, okay? So it's between New Orleans and Carolina, and if you ask me, New Orleans makes the most sense for him. I think that's where he's ultimately going to land. I think the Panthers are dysfunctional right now, and I think they're clearing up all kinds of cap space. They've already cleared out $25 million worth of cap space. You know what they're after, okay? They're not even trying to hide it, okay? They know what they're trying to do. Everybody else knows what they're trying to do. The question is Deshaun Watson going to get on board with it or not? And are the Panthers going to be willing to give up what it's going to take? Because not only are the Texans going to want 3 1s, they're going to want Brian Burns or somebody like that on their defense, and they're probably going to want one of their receivers. It's got to be somebody young on a rookie contract. You don't want any of the veterans that's making a ton of money. So you're going to want Brian Burns, and you're going to want one of their young, stud offensive players, and you're going to take that guy. You don't want Christian McCaffrey if you're the Texans, because he's making a chunk of change, and he hasn't been healthy the last 2 years, right? But you'll look around that team, and you'll look at one of their pieces offensively, or maybe another piece defensively. They could say, hey, we want Jeremy Chin, and we want Brian Burns, and the 3 first-round picks, and he's yours. You're like, shit, you gutting my defense at this point. Like, can I give you Shaq Thompson instead? He's like, no. Shaq Thompson just got a new deal. No. We don't want that money. We want the young boy, first round. We still got 3 years of control till we got to pay them. We want those contracts. We don't want the Shaq Thompson contract. So they might have some tough decisions to make. Meanwhile, for New Orleans, I'm looking around at their roster and I'm saying, where's the young good stuff that you might be interested in? I don't know if there's a lot of young good stuff there. So I don't know if they can sweeten the pot as much as Carolina can, but it'll be interesting to see what the Houston Texans, because they hold all the cards really. Once Deshaun says, yeah, I'm cool with either one of those spots, now it's their job to find a way to get the most they can out of this situation, because this is unprecedented. This is uncharted territory. We never, ever see a guy the caliber of a Deshaun Watson change teams at this point of his career. We've seen guys change teams at age 30 or age 33. We see that as guys get older and longer into their careers, they switch teams. We rarely see a guy going into the prime of his career, already establishing himself as one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. We rarely see that guy switch teams. It just doesn't happen. Not in a league that is quarterback dependent. So this is uncharted territory, and the Texans are going to absolutely house somebody. But that's the price to pay here if you want Deshaun Watson. But that's another quarterback name. Speaking of quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins. He did it again. Nobody has finessed the NFL and worked the system better than Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position now. I think Darrelle Revis is right there with him. To me, Darrelle Revis, I've never seen a guy take his plate, right? Have his plate loaded up full of money, right? Full of bread. Enough to stuff him for years upon years. I've never seen a dude go sit down at the table, take a couple bites of the bread and say, you know what? I want more. Like, bro, you got a lot of bread left on your plate. It's a lot of food there. Finish that first, then get back in line. There's a lot of guys starving that hasn't even gotten their first serving yet. You're trying to come back up here for seconds. And I don't know if I've ever seen a guy cut the line as many times as Darrelle Revis did, work the system and milk it for all it's worth. But boy, Kirk Cousins, I think he might have surpassed him, because quarterback money is unlike any other money in the NFL. And Darrelle Revis was making cornerback money, and that's really good money. After quarterback, you could argue it's tackle, corner, and edge rusher. Receivers are starting to get up there, but those are the guys that are making the real bread. So corner is up there, but ain't nobody making money like quarterbacks. And Kirk Cousins, my God, has he milked the system for all it's worth. For a guy that most people view as a middling, mediocre at best quarterback, a guy that can't win the big game, can't get it done in the clutch, and is no better than 12th best quarterback in the league, somewhere in that neighborhood. For a guy like that to have made the type of money he's made in his career and continues to make, it's a testament to Kirk Cousins' acumen as a quarterback, but more importantly, as a businessman. He has absolutely worked this system. Washington started it off by, he would have taken his life, and the amount of money he's accumulated and amassed in his career would have taken a drastic turn had Washington just acquiesced after the 2015 season, when he wanted $48 million guaranteed in a deal. If they would have just given him that deal, Kirk Cousins wouldn't be anywhere near the amount of money he's made. But because they refused to pay him and they lowballed him and they wanted to give him $24 million guaranteed instead of 48, Kirk Cousins turned that down, parlayed it into a franchise tag, and then parlayed that into another franchise tag, then went out and got the first fully guaranteed contract in NFL history on a multi-year deal. All right. Then parlayed that now into an extension, which he got from the Vikings like 2 years ago. And then he's taken that and now gotten a 1-year extension in Minnesota for $35 million. The man absolutely is killing it. You say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but the guy is absolutely laughing all the way to the bank. He remains in Minnesota. He also, in that 1-year deal, picked up a no trade clause. So in the event that the Vikings next year decide, we're not happy with you, we want to move on, he's like, okay, cool, but I get to pick where I go. So the biggest thing wasn't just the money for Kirk. It was picking up the no trade clause aspect, because remember, there were rumors about Kirk Cousins potentially being shipped off to a place like Indy. They were starting to sniff around because, as you can see, the Colts are getting desperate. This is why you don't remove yourself from a situation until you have your situation under control. They removed themselves from the Carson Wentz game, and they just assumed, oh yeah, we'll get somebody. We're the Indianapolis Colts. We'll pick up somebody along the way. They may have to settle for Jimmy G, and they'll be perfectly fine with that if that's what they ultimately have to do. But they're getting desperate. They were sniffing around Kirk. The Vikings said, matter of fact, we're going to put a stamp on this. Boop, that's ours. Back up. That's our guy. Stamped him with a $35 million extension and also a no trade clause for Kirk. So he's off the table. He's dead if you're looking to trade for him. So Indianapolis is back to the drawing board. Really, it's the only thing that's left for them. They tried to call and get access to Deshaun Watson, and the Texans they smushed them in the face. Back up, man. What the hell are you doing? Back up. No, just a taste. And then slam the door in their face. Martin Payne style. So they're really just down to Jimmy G at this point. That's not a good place to be if you're the Indianapolis Colts, to be honest with you. But I digress. So we're continuing to see a lot of these dominoes fall. The quarterback position, we told you these dominoes were going to fall. The first domino was Aaron Rodgers deciding to stay in Green Bay. Then that next sense, he wasn't leaving because Denver was interested in Aaron Rodgers. That was their first choice, right? Since he wasn't leaving Green Bay, they went to their second choice, which was Russell Wilson. So that next domino fell. And once that domino fell, that prompted Washington to then do their homework on Deshaun Watson. They found out he didn't want any parts of them like everybody else. So they went after Carson Wentz. So now you start to see the dominoes falling. And now everybody's positioning themselves, getting their guy to make sure that they don't end up without a seat in this game of musical chairs. And so it's amazing to see how everything has transpired. And again, we're not even done yet. A lot of these teams are continuing to position themselves. Let's see if any other deals have taken place. The Cowboys have been really active today. So I talked about DeMarcus Lawrence and how he didn't want to take a pay cut or restructure. So they've given him a new 3-year, $30 million deal, fully guaranteed. So they essentially are freeing up some more cap space. So he wouldn't take a pay cut. So they restructured his deal by giving him guaranteed money, $30 million guaranteed over the next 3 years. So fully guaranteed 3-year, $30 million deal. They traded Amari Cooper, did the Dallas Cowboys over the weekend, as I mentioned already, which freed up the cap space they needed to then go out and sign Michael Gallup back. And there's a lot of discussion amongst Cowboys fans. Did we just do the right thing? Because, Coop wasn't as that deal didn't turn out to be as fruitful as they thought when they signed him to it. However, Michael Gallup has been just as injured as Amari Cooper has been, with a lot less production. Now, Gallup, to me, I've said this before, when they look for a go-to guy in crucial moments, it's usually Michael Gallup. It was never Amari Cooper for me. So I think they figured that out as well. And they said he's a lot cheaper, not going to cost us as much. We saw the deal that Michael Gallup ended up getting. It's a good deal. It's modest money, but it's not Amari Cooper $20 million per year, which is what he signed, 5 years, $100 million deal to play for the Cowboys. It's not that. So they were able to, save themselves some money there. They lose Cedric Wilson, who was coming on in Dallas. He's now in Miami. So we've seen the Cowboys having to make a number of different moves to put themselves in a position to get under the cap and then be comfortable when they get under the cap. They've also made it abundantly clear that they're looking to trade La'el Collins, their right tackle. So the Cowboys, they're in a tough spot. When you find yourself, and that's what happens when you try to sign everybody and you start wasting money. They gave good money to Jalen Smith and then cut his ass a year and a half later. And so when you start wasting money that way, you find yourself in a position where you can't sign everybody, but you're also in a tough spot because you got to start letting guys walk that you don't want to let walk. And that's what they had to do with the cornerback a couple of years ago that went to the Miami Dolphins in free agency. And now they're having to do it again here with Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson. And, but I've always said this, the Cowboys draft well at the receiver position. They draft well overall, but specifically the receiver position. So they will be fine, if you ask me. Now, let's see if any other deals have come down the pipeline since we've been on. Let's see. Make sure that I didn't miss any noteworthy deals. And there'll be more. We still haven't heard from Allen Robinson. We still haven't heard from Teron Armstead. We still haven't heard from some of the bigger names left in free agency. But we will hear from those guys as time continues to pass. Hassan Reddick is a Philadelphia Eagle, and he will be a $45 million deal for Hassan Reddick. I think it's a 3-year, $45 million deal with $30 million of it guaranteed. So that's another move that was made. That is a big move. I felt like Philadelphia's defensive line started to really get up there, and they got a huge boost from Josh Sweat last year. But I think that some of these other guys are starting to fall off. Like they realize Ryan Kerrigan, he ain't it, right? So this move to me symbolizes that we need to beef up our pass rush, and he's a guy that can definitely do it. Hassan Reddick has been doing work here lately, so that's a good move for them. Speaking of wide receivers, Jarvis Landry cut in Cleveland, and they gave him permission to seek a trade. So again, I talked about this already. When you give a guy permission to seek a trade, what you're essentially telling him is, we're done with you. Okay. Your services are no longer necessary here. They're no longer needed. So either you find a trade or we will have to cut you. They did not find anyone that wanted to trade for Juice Landry. And I don't really blame anyone. Like, to me, Jarvis Landry at best is a number 2 wide receiver in this league. He does all the dirty work. He's a selfless guy. He's not one of these diva receivers. He'll block. He'll go over the middle. He'll do all the dirty stuff. You know what I mean? He'll end up with 872 yards, but it's a physical, gritty 872 yards. And, you'll love him because he's a tough guy. He's a warrior, but he isn't dominant in any stretch of the imagination. But that said, he will find a home. And I think there will be some teams out there very interested in the services of a Jarvis Landry. That is for certain. So I think there are going to be several teams that'll be interested. To me, it depends on what the price range is for him and what he's seeking out on the free agent market. But I can think of a number of teams. To me, Kansas City makes the most sense for a guy like Jarvis Landry. They are desperate for another guy that is impactful at the receiver position, which is why they went out and got Josh Gordon last year. They were looking for someone. They missed Samuel Watkins, right? They missed Sammy Watkins and his departure. And they needed another guy to step up, and they haven't had that the last 2 years, and I think they've suffered because of it. So a guy like Sammy Watkins, Jarvis Landry would make a ton of sense in Kansas City, if you ask me. But, I don't know if they're in a position to do that. I don't know if they're interested in doing that. I don't know if they're going to look to the draft to do that, because, again, these receivers, you can see this market, it's a little pricey. So if you can find a guy to do that for you in the draft where it won't cost you as much, that's the most ideal thing. But that's not always the case. So we'll see what happens with Jarvis Landry. Let's see. Anything else happened? I don't want to forget about anything that may have taken place. Green Bay cutting Zadarius Smith. We knew that could potentially come up. That was something when he had the issues with his back, and I talked about it. Remember, we had a segment at the end of a show where I said, is this guy going to be traded, cut, or take a pay cut, or are they going to release this guy? And Zadarius Smith was on that list. And sure enough, the Packers have cut Zadarius Smith. When healthy, he's been one of the most productive pass rushers the last 3 years, but he was not healthy last year. They opted instead to go with Preston Smith. They re-upped on Preston Smith. Remember, both of the Smith brothers came on 3-year deals 3 years ago to Green Bay. And of the two, Preston Smith has been the most healthiest, and he's been, the most consistent. And that's the thing that you always got out of Preston Smith, even back to his days in Washington, was consistency. And the guy was always available every single week. And the Packers value that, and they rewarded him for that as Preston Smith stays in Green Bay on a new deal. Meanwhile, Zadarius Smith is out in Green Bay. Speaking of the Packers, Devontae Adams says he will not play under the franchise tag, which really complicates things in Green Bay because we still haven't heard the parameters of the Aaron Rodgers deal and how long Rodgers is going. Because to me, that's what they're waiting on. To me, how long Aaron Rodgers commits to is how long they'll commit to Devontae Adams for. If Rodgers says, I'll play for 2 more years, I'll sign a 2-year, $100 million extension. If that's the case, then you sign Devontae Adams to a 2-year deal, or if he's willing to sign that, you try to sign him to a 2-year deal. If Rodgers says, I'll come back for 4 years and I'll sign a $200 million contract, then you sign Devontae Adams to a 4-year deal. I think they're tied to whatever you do, to me, those two they have a synchronicity there. And I think there is a bit of, being tied at the hip, if you will, with those two in Green Bay. So when Rodgers decides how long he wants to play and they're able to bang out a deal there, I think that's when you'll finally see something maybe get done with Davante Adams, who is hell-bent on not playing under the franchise tag. And I don't really necessarily blame him either, because to me, we've seen more guys get hurt playing under the franchise tag in the last 3 to 4 years than we have, probably the previous 5 years combined. So it's not ideal to be playing under the franchise tag. Get your money while it's there to be got. Davante Adams, one of the best receivers in football, looking to get paid as such. I don't blame him for not wanting to play under the franchise tag. Look what happened to Allen Robinson in the last 2 years. I mean, that's disgusting what's happened to him. And look at his value. I mean, he's 2 years older. He didn't get that big deal that he was looking to cash in on out. Not to say that he hasn't been paid handsomely for being stuck in Chicago the last 2 years, but still, he would have much rather had that long-term deal, But we'll see what happens with Allen Robinson and some of the other guys that are free agents out there on the market. As I said, we are still in the tampering period, so there's so much more that will come down the pipeline. So CJ Uzomah intends to sign a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Jets. So to me, like Logan Thomas signed a deal similar to that last year. That's the going rate for a quality starting NFL tight end. Anybody that's above that threshold of a CJ Uzomah or a Logan Thomas, Will Dissly for the Seattle Seahawks re-signed with the Seahawks. He got a 3-year, $24 million deal. That's, to me, where you fit in as a tight end. If you're better than that group, and you're approaching the elites, then you should be getting 10, 11, 12 million per year. But CJ Uzomah, I thought, was a huge part of that offense for the Bengals. He's now going to be a member of the New York Jets. So you see these teams with these young quarterbacks doing all that they can to surround these young quarterbacks with talented football players that's going to help elevate the play of their young quarterbacks. So that's another one that just came down the pipeline not too long ago. Let's see if anything else has emerged. Steelers are giving their right tackle. Let's see what that says. Steelers are giving right tackle Chuks Okorafor a 3-year, $29 million. So he's staying in Pittsburgh. Tim Settle agreed to a 2-year deal in Buffalo. We talked about that already. Good for Tim. I wonder what the money looks like on that deal, but good for Tim Settle. I think with that Bills defensive line, and it makes sense because, again, a lot of the Bills staff came from Carolina with Ron Rivera and vice versa. So it wouldn't be shocking if, the Bills release a guy and that guy comes to Washington or vice versa, because they know what Washington's doing. They know what kind of a program they're running and vice versa. So it's not shocking that Tim Settle goes to Buffalo. And to me, they've got a defensive line where they just continue to churn guys in and out of that lineup. So Tim Settle is going to be a rotational guy over there in Buffalo, but I think he's going to see the field more and get more snaps with the Bills than he would have in Washington. And that's evident when you got Daron Payne, you got Jonathan Allen, you got Matt Ioannidis. He's essentially getting leftovers and table scraps in terms of snaps. In Buffalo, they don't really have a guy that's going to stop him from getting on the field. They got Ed Oliver, but I mean, and they've got, what's the kid, Harrison Phillips. But there's space on the field for a guy like Tim Settle. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to your comments by switching gears and getting to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder, and I think it's evening time now. So let's jump into the comment section. You guys know how this works. For those of you who do not, it's very simple. If you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If you want to jump to the front of the line, and I would advise you to do so, because I assure you there are a ton of comments here to be read. Super chats are the way to do that. We will get to as many of these as we can, but I'm not going to be able to get to everything, obviously. So let's get to the comment section, and we start off with a super chat from Stephen Combs. Thank you for the super chat, Stephen. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Stephen Combs, writes, called it in January. Wentz made the most sense if no Wilson. Feel biggest reason Colts soured is no vax issue. Can't lead locker room if not in line with the team's wishes. Jags loss made it easier to swallow. I think there is a lot of that, Steven. I think you are spot on with that sentiment. I think that their owner, who to me is one of the worst owners in football, in Jim Irsay, he's another one of these guys that's a little overly involved. I think that David Tepper, the Carolina Panthers owner, is kind of going down that similar path of a guy that is just too involved. And again, when you own an NFL franchise, you have every right to be as involved as you want to be, because I mean, it's a lot invested in these organizations. So I get that. But at the same time, sometimes you just need to back off and let the football people handle, the football operations. And Irsay isn't one of those guys. He's always in the middle of whatever's going on with the Indianapolis Colts, and sometimes to a detriment to his organization. And I think this is one of those situations where I don't think Carson Wentz was loved by everyone in that Colts locker room. I'm not going to sit here and act as if he was, or everyone in that organization, coaching staff, upper management, and the sort. However, I don't think it was this total 100%, Carson Wentz can't do it, isn't a good teammate, isn't a good leader of men, broad stroke that we can paint over the entire, roster, franchise, and organization that felt that way. I think we've already seen that teammates have come to his defense, and T.Y. Hilton was just on TV today talking about Carson Wentz being a hell of a leader and a guy that they felt played at a high level, and that, he had some struggles down the stretch, the Raiders game, the Jags game, and that's why they didn't make the playoffs, a big part of the reason why they make playoffs. But he said, look, Wentz stepped up in some big moments too and made some throws and made some plays. And so he's like, look, I wish him nothing but the best. Thought the guy was outstanding and wish he was still in Indy. So I think there are a lot of people that feel that way as well. And we've seen that sentiment on socials amongst players that felt like Carson Wentz should have still been there and that they used him as a scapegoat. So I do think there is a little bit of the whole vaccination thing, and then, ownership getting involved and them being a little disappointed how the season ended, and using that as, a crutch and an excuse and making it easier to swallow moving on from him. But make no mistake about it, Carson Wentz is eccentric. All right. He is different. And there is, a little something there. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is all just made up by the Indianapolis Colts. However, I don't think it's as significant as, some would like to portray it as. But if you called that way back in, you say January, more power to you. This blindsided me. I didn't think we were interested in Carson Wentz. I didn't think anyone was interested in trading for Carson Wentz, for that matter. I thought the Colts were going to have to release him. If they were that hell-bent on removing him from their organization and they were that disappointed and he was that bad of an apple, they were going to have to release him. They were going to find anyone willing to trade for Carson Wentz. I stand corrected. So thank you for that super chat. Another super chat here from Johnny Boy 26. Thank you for the super chat, Johnny Boy 26, who writes, here's to another 20K. Keep up the great content. Thank you, Johnny Boy. I really do appreciate you. Cheers to another 20K, 30K. The next milestone for me will be 50,000. So here's to the next 30K. Cheers. And thank you for your support. And I hope you'll be with me every step of the way as we continue to power forward and hopefully hit that mark of 50,000 subscribers in the near future. Chris Wilson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Chris writes, I like the Wentz trade. Seeing more good than bad from his teammates. And if any coaches can put Wentz in a better position, it's Ron and Scott Turner. We'll see about that. I reserve judgment on how good, Ron and Scott can be if they've got more talent. We haven't seen it here. So I don't know what they're going to do with more talent. but clearly this is the best talent they've had at the quarterback position since they've gotten to Washington. So that is evident. That is not up for debate. And now we're going to see what they do with it, and if they can surround him with enough pieces and parts, they can stay relatively healthy. If the offensive line can hold up and give Wentz time, he's talented, no doubt about it. And he's not afraid to chuck the football down the field, which at times can be to his detriment. But we've asked for a more explosive offense, a more down the field vertical passing game. We may get that now with Carson Wentz. He's not going to be looking to check it down underneath. He's going to be looking to, and again, that sometimes works against him because sometimes the check down is there. The ability to get it out of his hand is there, and he refuses to take that. Instead, holds on to it, takes a sack, or fumbles, or, tries to extend and ends up throwing a pick. So sometimes he can overextend plays, as I've said, but I'm interested to see if the whole leadership thing can be nipped in the bud. Ron is a guy that a lot of people around the league view as a tremendous leader. And if some of that can rub off on Carson Wentz, and if they can get him in the building and get him on board, and, Scott Turner can get his hands on him and he can really start to grasp the offense, that could take a while. It's a different system than Wentz is used to. But at the end of the day, I like the situation for Wentz because this is it for him. I've already stated that. This is his last opportunity to be a legitimate, unquestioned starter in the NFL. If he doesn't take advantage of this, I don't see anyone else bending over backwards to give him a chance to start and lead their team. This is the last set of keys he's going to get to drive an NFL vehicle as the starting quarterback. If he doesn't take advantage of this, if he doesn't take care of this car, keep it clean, and don't get in any accidents or get any tickets, if he can't steer clear of any trouble, he's going to have these keys revoked, and he won't get another pair. He'll be catching the bus. So we'll see what this situation ends up doing. Anyway, Condoleezza Perry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, Condo P. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, congratulations on 20K. It only gets better from this point, my friend. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell. Thank you so much, Condo P. Thank you for all that you do and all that the rest of the mods do out there for holding the kid down and really representing and making sure that people like the video and sub up if they haven't already done that. Like, it's not a coincidence that the uptick in the likes and the comments and the shares and the subs have gone up with the introduction of a lot of you becoming mods. I really do truly appreciate all that you guys have done. And again, none of this is possible without you guys. So thank you so much, Condo P, and to the rest of you out there. Thank you for helping me get to this point in the journey. But we're far from where we ultimately want to end up. And just continue helping me push forward is what I ask. Continue to support. And a lot of you have had unwavering support. So I ask that you continue to have that, continue to support, the videos and the different ventures. And I ask that you just continue to ride with me on this journey. Don't know where we're going to end up, but I sure hell want to enjoy the ride forever, how long it lasts. So thank you guys. And thank you, Condo P. Marcus Bird, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Marcus Bird writes, would you trade Carson for Watson and some picks? So generally speaking, first of all, obviously anybody would do that in their right mind. But I don't even think that's possible. When you trade for a guy, I don't think you're then able to then trade him. Like, this isn't basketball. You can't trade for a guy and then package him up in a pick and into a new deal and trade him. I think there's something that kind of guards against that, where like the cap number, the cap hit, like you're responsible for like all of their dead cap money for the entire contract. Like, there's a poison pill, I think, in there. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but I know I heard it before when we had a discussion similar to this one, when it was another situation where we traded for a guy and then we really wanted to kind of go back and trade for someone else because we didn't know, hey, if we would have known this guy was available, we could have traded for that guy. So I don't think that's even possible. But even if it was, again, they would not have traded for Carson Wentz if they knew Deshaun Watson was an option. And trust me, he didn't just become an option on Friday and Washington got blindsided by the fact that there were no criminal charges filed. They already spoke to his representatives And they made it abundantly clear that he wasn't interested in coming to Washington, which is why Washington moved on. If there was any hope that Watson was interested in Washington, they would have waited. Okay. They would not have acted on Carson Wentz. Nothing was forcing them to go after Wentz. No one was beating down the Indianapolis Colts door for Carson Wentz. I could be wrong about that. The Steelers or someone else could have came calling. But to me, Wentz would have sat there and he would have been around. And Watson, if Watson was a real option, you would have waited as long as you needed to give yourself a chance to get him. He wasn't an option in Washington because he didn't want to come to Washington. And that's been confirmed. He didn't want to come here. So would I do it? Of course I would do it. But that's not an option, which is why they traded for Carson Wentz in the first place. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Metaphor writes, "Sup, Lou? Sup, Metaphor?" Says, "Sorry, just got here. No reason to apologize. Better late than never." He says, "On vacay. Hope you enjoyed that vacay." He says, "Give me Wentz trade with picks for Watson. If he'll have us and send LB and wide receivers later rounds or Burks at 11. Yeah, again, he's not coming here. He didn't want to come here. He didn't want to come here, which is why we traded for Wentz. With that said, now you have to move on with what you have. No reason to continue to look back at what could have been, or maybe Watson could have. No, he didn't want to come here. So you got the guy that didn't have an option. And I don't know if you guys read what Carson Wentz said. I'm going to pull it up real quick and I'm going to read to you. To me, so Wentz spoke for the first time since the deal, right? And to me, what this says is I didn't have any choice here. I didn't have a no trade clause. I didn't have a choice to end up where I wanted to go. I don't really want to be in Washington, but if this is where God has, has planned for me next, then I'm not going to question him. I'm just going to do as I'm told, because I'm essentially living this life for God. So it's not up to me. And again, I don't know if you guys know this or not. I would assume you know this by now, but if you don't, Carson Wentz is a very, very religious individual, super religious. So he's one of those guys that moves by faith. So hearing him talk about that, not surprising. But what is surprising is that he sounded like a guy that was like, shit, I don't want to do this, but I'm not going to question God, because I'm one of those people that live my life. I feel like everything happens for a reason. And, maybe that's just my way of justifying things that happen that, you don't really like, but I really do truly believe everything happens for a reason, and you may not be able to see it, and it may not be ideal. And you may question why things are happening, but at the end of the day, I think everything happens for a reason. So let me see if I can find the Carson Wentz tweet with him, with what he said. And it's in here somewhere. I just don't know if I put it in a place where it was easily accessible. I don't see it. Let's see. I don't think I responded to that tweet. So it should. All right. It should have been in there. I can't find it. And it's in here somewhere. I should have just screenshotted it when I had it. But essentially, he spoke at a school. And he essentially said pretty much what I said. This is where God has placed him. He never said that he was happy for the new opportunity and looking forward to this, that, and the third. He just pretty much said, hey, this is where God wanted me to be. I didn't choose this. This is where God chose me to be. So I'm going to be there. And I'm going to try to make the best of the situation. So it didn't sound like a guy that was happy to be in Washington. And I'm pretty sure you'll hear that moving forward, that he's happy to be in Washington, grateful for the opportunity, good to be somewhere where you're wanted, that type of thing. You'll hear that. But that's not what I gathered from the little excerpt from when he spoke at the school. What I gathered is I'm a hostage. I was taken against my will. It is what it is. I'm going to make the best of the situation, but I didn't have any control over what happened to my future. So I had to take what happened, and I'm going to try to make the best of it. That's what it sounded like to me. God's in control. God's got me, and I'm going to allow God to kind of direct me. Whatever step that I take next, I'm going to take it because God ordained me to take that step. That's pretty much what I gathered from it. Not really happy for this opportunity. Glad to be in Washington, and I look forward to really making this pay off for them. I didn't hear that. So we'll see what happens with Carson Wentz. But just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. Metaphor. Chris Wilson, thank you for the super chat. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Chris Wilson. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, limit Wentz to a few big throws and lean on the run. They're gonna try and do that, but you went out and got Wentz and spent essentially $30 million, 28 to be exact, 5 on the roster bonus that he'll get here in a couple of days, and then the $23 million base salary that comes along with it. You essentially spent that bread for Carson Wentz to come in here and sling that thing, not for him to turn around and be a game manager. Look, Wentz is a really good quarterback. He has a lot of good intangibles, and they're going to figure out what is the best way to utilize him. But make no mistake about it. There were games where we had Taylor Heineke slinging that bitch 50 times. If Heineke can be out here slinging that thing 50 some odd times in multiple games throughout the course of the season, don't think for 1 second, Carson Wentz is going to come in here and have a bunch of games where he's 21 of 29. That's ideally what you would like to have happen. But the sad, truth of the situation, or as a wise man likes to say, the fact of the matter is, the truth of the matter is, Carson Wentz is probably going to have to come in here. There's going to be several games where he's going to have to throw that peel 40 times plus in a game to help us win or give us a shot to win. So the whole run the football, go play action fake and allow him to cut it loose down the field to Terry and Curtis Samuel and some of these guys that can run, that sounds great. But the reality of the situation is he's going to have to come in here. He's going to throw that thing. Malachi Malik, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Malachi Malik writes, Lou, what's up, my guy? What's up, Malik? Malachi, excuse me. What's up? He says, who do you think fits us more as a weapon, Drake London or Christian Watson? Both are beasts. I'm always looking for the guy that can offer you some speed along with his size. But I'm also always looking for the guy that can go top shelf. I think Drake London is more of that big frame, top shelf liquor dude that can go up there and say, hey, this is top shelf. This is not for you. More so than Christian Watson. I think Watson is more of a, go and stretch the football field vertically. And, in those situations, he can go up and go 50-50. But I think Drake London is more of a physical presence, which is what I'm looking for. But that said, I also want a guy that can run. I don't think Drake London is going to run. First of all, he's not running anything right now. He's banged up. But even if he were to run, I think he would run in the 4.5s, which is not slow. Mike Evans runs a 4.5 too, or he did it, at the combine when he came out. And if you can be big and physical like Mike Evans, which I think Drake London has a little bit of that in him, and still find a way to stretch the football field vertically, which if you got acceleration like Mike, Evans has, then you can find a way to get behind the defense, even though you're not a 4.4 blazer. And Christian Watson showed us, even though I think those times were somewhat skewed, he showed us he's got speed, top end speed. But you see it on tape. The 4.380 he ran at the combine isn't surprising because he showed us he could run. So both are big guys. Both offer you size. I think London, if you're looking for that physical presence, he offers you that. If you're looking for a guy with size that can stretch the football field vertically, Watson offers you that. Thank you for the super chat. So to answer your question, I think Drake London would be a guy that would appeal to me for what I think we need. I think we need a red zone threat. I think we need a guy that's big, strong, physical. 3rd and 6, you can throw it to him and he can outmuscle a guy even though he's on his back. We don't have that guy. Like the Chargers do that with Mike Williams. It's 3rd and 6. Mike Williams has a guy draped all over him and he still catches the football. You need a guy on your team to do that for you in order to be successful. If you're not going to get guys that are going to create massive separation on 3rd and 6, then you need a guy that's going to just say, I don't care if a guy's draped all over me. Get it to me in a place where I can catch it, and I got you. We used to have that guy in Pierre Garçon, which is why he was beloved in Washington, because it didn't matter if it was 3rd and 5 or it was 3rd and 9. If you got it to Pierre on 3rd and 9 and he had 7 yards, he was going to drag a defender for the other 2 yards that he needed to get the first down. If a guy was draped all over him on 3rd and 5 and he just ran to the sticks and stopped, we could still throw it to Pierre because he was going to out-muscle that guy for the football. We haven't had a guy since Pierre Garçon to do that. I'm looking for that kind of a guy. We don't have that guy on the roster right now. Terry's close, but Terry's not that dude. I'm looking for a big physical target to get the football to. So I probably would err on the side of Drake London, but I'd love to get my hands on Christian Watson. Truly would. As you said, they're both beasts. Thank you for that super chat. John Livingston, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JL Smooth, writes, what up, Lou? What up, JL Smooth? He says, love this time of the year. How about the Jags paying $72 million for Kirk? Crazy money, in my opinion. Thoughts on Tim Settle? Saw the Bills just signed him. So Christian Kirk getting a $72 million. That's just him getting to the bag. I'm happy for it, Christian Kirk. I don't trust him because he's got 2 first names, but at the end of the day, the ability for Christian Kirk to make plays has been shown in Arizona. The problem with him in Arizona was it wasn't enough balls to go around. They had 87 receivers, and they had DeAndre Hopkins. They had A.J. Green. They had Zach Ertz towards the end of the season. They've had a plethora of receivers come in and out of there that they were getting the football to while he was there. So he always had to split the rock around, and he's going to have to do that in Jacksonville, but he will take on a more prominent role in Jacksonville, one that will allow him to flourish. I think Jacksonville will look for him to take over the Marvin Jones role that they had Marvin Jones doing last year, which he was really good at. I think they're going to look for him, a younger option than Marvin Jones, to come in there and be a better version of Marvin Jones. So, yeah, it's a lot of money for a guy that's never had a 1,000-yard season in his career, but they're not paying him because of what he's done. And this is where a lot of you make mistakes in free agency. You don't pay a guy for what he's done in the league. You pay a guy for what he's going to do for you moving forward. I remember when Washington paid Pierre Garçon, that 5-year, $40 million deal or whatever it was from Indy. He had some good years in Indy because Peyton Manning was his quarterback, but we weren't quite sure what he was going to do. And we were pleasantly surprised when we got him. The first year he got injured with the heel or whatever, but he still was making plays. And, we saw what we were getting in Pierre Garçon, but we were paying him not because of what he did in Indy, but what we thought he was going to be able to do for us moving forward. You never want to get caught paying a guy for what they did in the past. That's how you'll end up getting fleeced in the future. So they're paying Christian Kirk because they think he can take that next step and become a bona fide, legitimate number 2, borderline low-level number 1, which I think that's a reach. I think he is a legitimate number 2 in this league. And if you've got 2 really good studs, he could be the best number 3 in football. So I think they view him, with the money they just paid him, they view him as a borderline 1. Like, we want you to come in here and be our best receiver. We'll see if he can handle that load or not. I feel like they got Laviska Shenault. They got some other guys there. I don't know if they'll be looking at him to be the number 1 guy, but that money says otherwise. So that was interesting money. As far as Tim Settle is concerned, I think it's a great move for Buffalo. He's going to add tremendous depth to your defensive line. He can rush the passer. Just 2 years ago, he had 6 sacks on the season. So he can get after the quarterback. He plays hard. He plays relentless. He is a guy that at times will jump out of his gap. He is a guy that can be moved in the run game because he's so aggressive at times. So he doesn't always play gap sound the defense up front. But what you will get out of Tim Settle is maximum effort. What you will get is a guy that will get after the quarterback when given the opportunity. The more he plays, the more productive he will be. But even if he doesn't see the field, but in a limited capacity like he did in Washington, you will still get good production out of Tim Settle. So you're getting yourself a quality run defender, but I think his greatest asset is his ability to get after the quarterback, because I think he can do that and help a defensive unit that could use more pressure on the quarterback. So I think that's what you're getting out of Tim Settle. Hold Hold on a second. I just saw something that made me stop. So somebody just posted in the comment section, "Rip to Razor Ramon." Oh man, that one hurts. I just pulled it up and it said that he's going to be taken off of life support. Ouch. That one stings. We'll have to give that one its just due another day. Yikes. Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Kyle writes, crazy time of the year for the NFL. Who you telling, Kyle? He says, we'll see how 2 more years of Cousins goes with new head coach. I told you that your new head coach loves Kirk Cousins. Worked with him. I want to say he was here. I don't know if they overlapped or not, but he strikes me as a guy because remember, he is great friends with Sean McVay. So we know Kevin O'Connell knows what Kirk Cousins is about because of Sean McVay. I'd like to think they overlapped in Washington, did Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins, so he knows what he's getting himself into. But even if they didn't, Sean McVay loves Kirk Cousins. Everyone that has worked with him loves him. Sean McVay did. Another guy that I respect is one of the best offensive minds in football, and Kyle Shanahan wanted to give Washington a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins, and we refused to trade him. So everyone that worked with Kirk swore by him. And I think Kevin O'Connell sees the value in a Kirk Cousins, as he should. I mean, people shit on Kirk all the time. They don't win. It's Kirk's fault. But that defense has been an atrocity the last 2 years. And Kirk's put up some of his best numbers of his career the last 2 years. So he's done a lot with little help. And I just feel like if they can get that defense right, Kirk Cousins is good enough to take them where they want to go. So we'll see what happens. He says, congrats on the 20K. Thank you. He says, your subs can fill up college basketball stadiums now. Yeah. I never looked at it that way. So that's a different perspective. So thank you. Thank you for the super chat. And thank you for the support, Kyle. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one is from John Livingston. Thank you for the super chat, JL Smooth. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Wentz has all the tools. This is facts, big facts. I've talked about him being toolsy. That's never been the question. He says he just needs to be saved from himself sometimes. The man sprained both of his ankles on a single play. That BS needs to stop. Congrats on the 20K, man. Here's to 50K. Thank you, JL Smooth. Greatly appreciate you. Here's to 50K. Cheers. Yeah. I mean, I think everything you just said is pretty much spot on. Sometimes he needs to be saved from himself because he's one of those guys, and I've said this before, and he's not alone. There are a number of guys like him in the league that don't know when to say when. And I've always said, friends know when to say when. And sometimes you got to be able to take the keys from one of these dudes when they get drunk behind the center, thinking that they can make a play when there's no play there to be made. And you got to say, hey, give me the keys. You catching an Uber home, or I got you. But if you don't take the keys away from these dudes, sometimes they'll run around 30 yards, throw it up for grabs, and it'll get picked. And you're like, what the hell was that? Or they'll throw it left-handed and it'll get picked, which we've seen Carson Wentz do. He did that shit last year. Sometimes you got to save these dudes from themselves. So the way to do that is to protect him so that he's not under siege and to put him in positions where he's not having to sling it 54 times in a game, you know? So we'll see if they are able to do that, put him in a position where, you know, he is able to be successful. Let's see. Got another super chat. This is from Kyle, just Kyle. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Kyle, just Kyle. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, your Wentz video was spot on. I can't get myself to love it either. And his words tell me that now that we just traded for a QB with plenty of downside and limited upside to come here, and he doesn't want to be here. Thoughts? I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be here. I'm just telling you that's what I gathered from what he said. I could be misreading what he said. Look, he was at a school for, kids, Christian kids, because again, I told you, he's a man of faith. So he was speaking at a school and he was talking more about God and his purpose in life. So him talking about wanting to be in Washington wasn't at necessarily the forefront of the conversation. This was more about his path, his journey, and the role that God plays in his life, right? I just thought that somewhere in that statement, I would hear that I'm happy for the opportunity. I'm happy that God placed me in Washington with this opportunity, and I'm looking to take full advantage of. I was hoping to see that somewhere in there. Maybe I'm being nitpicky. I didn't see that in there anywhere, okay? What I heard was a guy that said, essentially, hey, I had no control over this. God is going to decide what's next for me, and whatever God decides, that's what's going to be best for me. And so I'm in Washington. If I had to choose, I probably wouldn't have chosen Washington myself. He didn't say that. I'm drawing inferences. I do that. And so again, I could be totally off base here. Because keep in mind, you have to take context into everything that you read. He was giving that answer at a Christian school, talking about faith. So this conversation was more faith-based, more about God and God's presence in his life, less about football. He talked about, at the end of the day, God doesn't care how many touchdowns you throw for. When you get to Judgment Day and you got to answer to God, he doesn't care about you having a season back in 2022 for the Washington Commanders where you threw 37 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. God doesn't give a shit about that. But that's essentially what he was saying. So I get all of that. I just, at some point in there, wanted to hear, God, this is the next chapter for me. This is where God wants me to be. And I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited God put me here. I didn't hear that. I didn't read that. That doesn't mean that's not how he feels. So I don't want to tell you that he doesn't want to be in Washington, because I can't confirm nor deny that. What I read was a guy that sounded like he was disappointed how things ended in Indy. He was taken hostage by Washington because he did not get to choose where his next place was going to be. He essentially chose Indianapolis when he left Philadelphia. Okay, he chose Indianapolis. He wanted to go to the Colts. He wanted to be reunited with his former, quarterbacks and coach and offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. He wanted to be reunited with them. I don't think he chose Washington. Washington chose him. So, he's already thanked Indy. Have anybody out there, I could have missed this. Has anybody seen hey, welcome to Washington? Or, hey, it's Carson Wentz here. I'm happy to be in Washington. Let's get after this thing. Has anybody seen that tweet? Has anybody seen that post on socials? Because I haven't. And again, that's not important. He doesn't have to do that. But if you're excited about a move or you're ready to get things started, that's usually what you do. He's already thanked Indy for his 1 year of service there. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So we'll see. I don't think he doesn't want to be here. Excuse me. I'm not feeling the enthusiasm, but guess what? Nobody wanted to come here. And I think that includes Carson Wentz. So I'm not surprised if he didn't want to come here. He didn't have a choice and a say so in the matter. He just pretty much was thrusted out of Indy by Washington. So we'll see what happens. He's got plenty of upside. I don't agree with the limited upside. And there are some downsides here, but Washington has put themselves in a position where if the negatives outweigh the positives, it's a 1 year deal. They can get out of this thing. No strings attached. And we go back after it again in 2023. So I like that part of this deal. I love the nature of this deal that says, if you're not happy next year, and I've said this, if he doesn't hit a bomb, I'm talking about a pimp this home run type of bomb where you watch it fly, you throw the most egregious backflip as you trot around the bases in like 22 seconds, which is pissing everybody off. If you don't pimp this out of the park, if you're Carson Wentz, we're going to go look for a quarterback next year. That's how I feel. They still may be looking for one this year, for all I know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. MTM Marantha, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, how much does our running game have to improve for Wentz to duplicate last year's success or improve from last year? So I don't think it has to be what the Colts run game was, because Jonathan Taylor is that dude and their offensive line is that good in the run game. I think we just need consistency out of our run game. And it doesn't have to just be, because we're not the Indianapolis Colts in the run game. It doesn't just have to be Antonio Gibson. You know, it doesn't have to, it could be Curtis Samuel. It could be jet sweeps. It could be, tossing it to Curtis Samuel out of the backfield. It could be, getting it to J.D. McKissick on a draw. Like, it doesn't have to just be turnaround power run game with Jonathan Taylor in between the tackles and gash him for a 77-yard run, and you look up and he's approaching 2,000 yards rushing on the season. It doesn't have to be that way. But I do think the semblance of a run game needs to be consistent. Like, there were games this past year where the run game was non-existent, and we really put the bulk of the load on the shoulders of the quarterback, which was Taylor Heinicke, and he just wasn't equipped to deal with that on a week-in, week-out basis. Every now and again, as we saw with Heinicke last year, there was the Giants game, the first Giants game. There was the Falcons game. Every now and again, he can go out there and stroke it. But what we really wanted Heinicke to be was the Panthers game. Like, ideally, you look at Taylor Heinicke, you look at what they really wanted to be as an offense. It's really the Panthers game. Super efficient, 2-3 touchdown passes, only 9 attempts or whatever. He was like, I think Heinicke was like 21 of 17 in that game with 3 touchdown passes and like 200 yards. Like, that's what they really wanted Taylor Heinicke to be. But the problem was we weren't consistent enough as a rush offense for him to be able to manage the game that way and be that efficient offensively as a passing unit. So I think from a rush standpoint, we just need to be more consistent. Remember, we got to week, I want to say 16 maybe, before Antonio Gibson had his first 100-yard effort of the season. Like, that can't happen. We can't go the first 3 months of the season and our running back hasn't amassed a 100-yard game. Now, we had games where we absolutely destroyed teams on the ground. I think there was one game where we rushed for well over 200 yards, right? Like, and it was running backs, everybody getting their little piece of the, pie or whatever. That's what we need to do. It doesn't have to be just one guy. But we're going to have to be more consistent. We don't want Carson Wentz having to throw it on average 34 to 37 times for us to have a chance to win. That's a losing recipe. You want those interception numbers to stay nice and low and tidy? He needs to be throwing the football anywhere from 25 to 31 times a game, not 34 to 37 times a game. Let's see. Tony P56. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Tony P56 writes, the day we sign Wentz, Ron, let me out like Trey and Boys in the Hood. I'll Uber and meet y'all there. He said, then I learned nobody wanted to come to DC and watch the hype videos, so I closed the door and we rolling. Oh, we rolling. Oh, we rolling. Shut the door, yo. We rolling. I hear you. That's why, to me, as a fan, you got to understand where we are, who we are, where we are in our process, and what this is. A lot of people are still looking at this organization like it's the mid to late 80s, early 90s. Like, no, that's not who we are. That's not how we're viewed. That's not what this is. Understand that this is not a destination that is preferred. I've talked about that already. So you got to understand that desperate times call for desperate measures. And they had to find the one quarterback with a no trade clause. Jimmy G has a no trade clause. So even if they were interested in Jimmy G, I played the soundbite from the Junkies where they talked to somebody that was close to the situation that said, Jimmy G didn't want to come to Washington, and he had a no trade clause up until March 16th. And the 49ers would like to move him before the new start of the new league year. Why? Because they're going to be on the hook for some bonus money that they'd like to pawn off on someone else. So they'd like to move Jimmy G theoretically between today or tomorrow, because they don't want to get to tomorrow on Wednesday and him still be there, and then they're on the hook for the roster bonus. That said, Jimmy G's got a no trade clause up until March 16th, which he could have, in theory, invoked and said, no, I'm not going to Washington. Are you crazy? I don't want to go there. So instead of looking like, if Jimmy G's turning you down, you got problems. So instead of looking like you couldn't get Jimmy G, you just go and get Carson Wentz. That's what we did. So yeah, shut the door. We rolling. I always said I'm not getting out of the car, but a lot of people been trying to get out of the whip. So it's not okay. My girl Condo P says she did see him making a comment about coming to Washington. I haven't seen it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Again, I'm not perusing socials as much as a lot of you out there. I generally, things like that usually show up on my timeline, but I didn't see that. So anyway, I digress. Irish, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Wentz just got scapegoated after 1 year in Indy. I don't blame him for not being happy with it. There's a statement out there about him being excited to join the team. So that's great to hear, because I wasn't privy to that. But again, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist and it's not out there. So that's good to hear that he wants to be here, because no need in crying over spilt milk and mulling over what the Indianapolis Colts did/are trying to do to you. Just move on. Make the best of the situation. You're now in Washington. This is a team that feels like they can do big things if you come in and lead them to the promised land, because this conference is wide ass open. As we've talked about, the division stinks. There is a lot of room for opportunity and growth if you can find a quarterback to play at a high level in the NFC. There is a humongous opportunity out there, because there is nothing in the NFC stopping anyone from getting, as we saw, the 49ers led by Jimmy G. Yes, their defense was dominant. Yes, their run game was outstanding. But still, Jimmy G led them to the NFC Championship. And 2 years ago, now 3 years ago, Jimmy G led them to the Super Bowl. You can do that in the NFC. That shit doesn't fly in the AFC with the quarterbacks out there. But you can get away with that. If Wentz comes in and plays at a high enough level, this is a playoff team. But he's got to play at that level. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to play at that level. And we've got to surround him with talent. And we've got to play better defensively. And we've got to be consistent defensively. So we'll see what happens. I'm glad to hear that he already reached out and said he's happy to be in Washington. I just want to make sure that this isn't a hostage situation, that he actually wants to be here. That's all I'm looking for. It's because we know the other quarterbacks didn't want to be here. And maybe he didn't want to be here, but he didn't have a choice. Nobody wants to feel like they're not wanted. And that's what I was just trying to guard against. Another guy that's here because he didn't have a choice. He really doesn't want to be here. You're here, make the best of the situation. All right. Let's see. Condo P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, check your Twitter for the Wentz post. I will definitely do that after this stream. Let's see. Really appreciate that, Condo P. Matter of fact, I'm going to read it right now, because I already went out on a limb and said that I didn't see anything. So if that, in fact, has been sent to me, I'm going to find it right now. And let's see. In that same statement he made to the Colts organization at the very end, he says, I'm looking forward to getting to Washington. This organization has a rich history and a roster full of talent. I'm going to do everything I can this offseason to prepare for a special season. Cannot wait to see you at FedEx Field this fall. God's plan, eyes fixed on him. AO1. So there you have it. He did make that statement. I'm going to tell you what. I saw this same post. I saw all the Colt stuff, and I read probably the first. So this is a situation of just not reading something to the end. And I laugh on Twitter because, there's this one standard post that you see when somebody tweets out something that's a little long. It's not that long. These kids are so lazy. I just fell victim to it, though, myself. So I can't even, that's like the pot calling the kettle black. I literally read the first two paragraphs, had nothing to do with Washington, and I was like, okay, this has nothing to do with me. So I exited stage left. Had I read it all the way through, and it wasn't even that much, I would have seen that he talked about Washington at the end. So thank you for that. I'm glad that you guys got me straight there. Let's see. Malachi Malik, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Writes, also, how do I become a member of the mob? Been trying for weeks. Congrats on 20K, brother. Okay. Thanks for the 20K love. Really do appreciate you for that. And thank you for your support. And I ask that you continue to support the movement. As far as becoming a member of the mob, it's fairly easy. Now, if you're trying to do it on a mobile device, I have heard people run into issues on a mobile device, but there should be a button that says join right where it says subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, it'll say subscribed, and the join button should be right next to that. If it's not there, a lot of times I've heard people say it's not there on a mobile device. You have to go to a desktop or a laptop or something like that, and you should be able to see it and access it there. You can also go to my YouTube homepage, and the button will be there to join as well at the very top. So there are multiple ways to do it, but if you're trying to do it on a mobile device and you can't see it, which sometimes is the case, then just you try and do it on a desktop or a laptop device. Thank you for the super chat, Malachi Malik. Free Shabazz, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Free Shabazz writes, what are your thoughts on switching Kendall Fuller to free safety and going after corner in draft or free agency? I wouldn't have a problem with that if they were able to procure the services of a really good corner. Once again, you can never have too many corners. If Kendall Fuller is comfortable playing free safety and thrives at it, I have no problems with it at all. Kendall Fuller, they signed Kendall Fuller to be a corner, but if they can move him to free safety and get value out of him, I'm all for it. If they want to keep, he's a really smart football player. They know that he's got ball skills, so I think they want him on the field wherever they can get him. Right now, until otherwise notified, he's a corner. And I always just envisioned him going back inside at some point. When they drafted Juice last year, the first thought that entered my mind is, okay, they're going to kick Kendall Fuller back inside. And this is going to be just like, old times when he was here the first time. That first year, he was outside. He struggled. They moved him inside. He struggled at first, and then he got it. And once he got it, he was one of the best nickels in the game. I was like, okay, we're going down that path again. Go outside first, realize he needs to go inside, struggled a little bit because he struggled early in the season last year. And I thought if he stays inside, by week 7 or 8, he's going to figure that shit out again, and we're going to be back where we were before he left. But that didn't happen. They put him back outside, and some of that was due to injuries. William Jackson III suffered an injury early in the season. Juice suffered multiple injuries, including multiple concussions, and he had to go back outside. So I don't know what they're going to decide to do. I feel like right now the biggest need is nickel, because you can keep Kendall outside. You could even move Kendall around. But you can never have enough corners. If Juice comes back healthy, he showed us he can play some ball on the outside. We know William Jackson III, he started to get his act together as the season wore on. We got some guys, but I still think we're missing that nickel. That guy inside is going to give us a chance to fight against the elite nickel or slot wide receivers. We got torched inside last year, big time. So I wouldn't be opposed to it. Michael White, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Michael White writes, congrats on the 20K, MOBB for life. Really appreciate you, Michael. Thank you for the kind words. And you know what this is, man. Stand up. We in the building. Mob Squad for life. I love it. Want more of it. Thank you for the super chat, Michael White. Hunter Hodovic. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Hunter Hodovic, writes, if we can't get Sauce at 11, I don't think he'll be there at 11. I say trade back into the first and get another second. He says trade back in the first. So trade back from 11. Again, takes 2 to tango. And get another second. Then go wide receiver, linebacker, safety. Order doesn't matter. Thoughts? If you can trade back, I've said this already. When we took a quarterback, I thought it put the trade back scenario on the table, and it upped the percentage that trade back would be the option. Why? Because when you trade away assets for Carson Wentz, you then want to recoup those assets. So before, when you had your full complement of picks this year and next year, you weren't really necessarily worried about compiling more draft capital. You were more concerned about getting the best player available. Now that you have Carson Wentz and you think maybe I've solved the quarterback problem, but I had to give up some draft capital to do it, and I may be giving up a second-round pick next year, and I'm giving up a third this year. Shit, you want your third-round pick back this year. You want your second-round pick back next year. So if you can trade back and pick up picks, whether it's this year or next year or a combination of the two, you're looking to do that now, more so than you were before you had to trade away picks to get Wentz. So I think trade back is a very plausible scenario this year. However, again, it's all about getting the most value for the pick. If you're sitting at 11 and you feel like there's 7 guys with a similar grade, and it doesn't matter if you take him here at 11 or you take the guy at 17 or 18, you feel good about it, then you do that. If there is a big time discrepancy in scores between the guy that you are sitting there ready to take at 11 and 14, 15, 16, 17, which you would be trading back to, then you have to ask yourself, how much is it really worth to us to pick up a second or a third, it's some draft capital, a fifth, whatever, a second, a fourth and a fifth, or a second and a third, or 2 threes. How valuable is that to me, really, to pass up on a guy that could be an all-pro, perennial Pro Bowl player at 11? You have to weigh that because, again, the guys that help you win in this league are the studs, are the elite players, okay? Those are the guys that are going to help you win the most. Trading back and getting a bunch of draft capital and getting a bunch of guys that are going to fill up the roster but not necessarily make a dent, that's not what you're after. What you want are blue chippers. And you got a chance to get a blue chipper at 11. Don't pass that opportunity up to get a bunch of red and white chips. Get as many blue chippers as possible. That's been one of the problems in Washington for too many years, is that we haven't had enough elite level players. We got a bunch of guys that are really solid, and we try to make them out to be better than what they truly are. We don't have enough elite level talents on our roster. At 11, you have a chance to get an elite level talent. Don't just pass that up for the greed of wanting to move back and pick up more draft picks. If there's an elite talent sitting there, as I like to call it, spillage, at 11, take the elite talent. And that's what you're referring to with Sauce Gardner. I don't think he's going to be there, but he's not the only guy that's worthy of a selection at 11. So I think there's something to be really considered there if you're Washington. We'll see what they decide to do. Free Shabazz. Stand up. You are officially the newest member of the MOBB. Really do appreciate you, Free Shabazz Mob. You know what to do. Open your arms wide. Show Free Shabazz some love and welcome him to the squad. We are so glad to have you, and we look forward to chopping it up moving forward. So, let's see. Tony P56, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Tony P56, writes, do we restructure? Don't remember it in the past. Well, I've said this already. We don't have a ton of contracts that will allow you to restructure and pick up a bunch of space. We don't have any huge contracts. Jonathan Allen just signed a contract last year. Don't know what his cap number is and hit is this year. But maybe you restructure a guy like Jonathan Allen. You just signed our center, Chase Roulier, to a deal last year in the offseason. Maybe you go to Chase Roulier and you try to restructure his deal and make it more upfront money and a lot less base. I don't know. There's not a lot of restructuring that I think we can do. Honestly, they went to Landon Collins, asked him to take a pay cut. He decided he would do that. be a team player. Then they came back to him after the Wentz deal and said, we need you to take another pay cut. And he's like, come on, bro. Y'all tripping. And that's when they decided that they're going to have to move on from Landon Collins. So I don't think there's much more they can do in that regard. We're fine. I've already said this. No, we don't have a ton of cap space, but we're fine. Again, the damage that really needs to be done to me in this draft really stems from the this year in the offseason, really stems from the draft. I think there are a few pieces that we could pick up in free agency that are out there, specifically the tight end position for me. But I think a lot of the damage that needs to be done, and maybe a guard, there may be a guard that is interesting out there that provides us with depth, but I'm more interested in getting a guy that can start at guard. That's going to come via the draft more likely than not. I'm more interested in us potentially finding an option at receiver. That's more likely in the draft. That's not a guy that I'm looking to spend money on in free agency. I'm interested in finding another option at running back. Well, to me, that guy exists in the draft. That's not a guy you need to sign in free agency. I'm interested in finding another quality swing tackle like Cornelius Lucas. If he's not that, more likely than not, that guy could be in free agency. That's where we found Cornelius Lucas. That's where we found Wes Schweitzer. Those guys could be out there, but more likely than not, middle linebacker, to me, that's in the draft. I don't think there's a guy in free agency that moves the needle enough for us to feel confident they can go out and get. That's a draft thing. Corner, safety. To me, those are draft items. I don't think there's a guy in free agency that moves the needle that's not going to make you, spend the kind of money that you're not looking to spend, that it's justifiable to go out and get. I think, to me, those are all positions that you look to attack via the draft. So, I don't think we're going to spend a ton of money in free agency. I don't think we're going to do that before Wentz. We're definitely not going to do it after Wentz, but I do think there's still some money there to be spent in free agency and to do it in a very shrewd way that does help elevate this roster. And we'll see if they do that or not. John Coaster, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, John Coaster, let's see. We'll read this one right here. Who do you think we will pick up in free agency? Right now, I don't know. It's hard to say, John, to be honest with you, because of the cap situation. And then really, when you're in the position that we're in, you don't get to decide what you want to do. You're really at the mercy of the rest of the league. Like, when you've got money, you can decide if you want to have the thigh, or if you want a breast, or if you want, the butt of the turkey or the chicken. You get to decide what part of the chicken or the turkey that you want. You get the cut that you want. When you're in our position, you get whatever's left. All right. After everybody picks off the turkey or picks off the chicken, cuts off both wings, and they cut off the thigh, you get left with whatever's left. Okay. Whatever the remains are, that's what you get to pick through. So right now we're at the mercy of everybody in free agency because, like, for instance, I said Bobby Wagner would really be a nice pickup. But guess what? There are a lot of teams that are interested in Bobby Wagner. And if someone throws good money at Bobby Wagner and shows interest right off the bat, there's nothing we can do. We don't have the money or the resources to sign Bobby Wagner right away. We'd have to wait. And I don't think you're going to be able to wait on Bobby Wagner. And there are a number of guys that are going to be out there like that, where you just can't wait. You either got to make them an offer immediately, and it's got to be a high offer, or they're going to go somewhere else where they can get that high offer. So I think we're at the mercy of all these teams in free agency, to be honest with you. And so we're starting to see the market take shape. I talked about the tight end position. Look at how drastic of a turn that it took when we went from the tight end Mike Gesicki in Miami, Dalton Schultz in Dallas, Zach Ertz in Arizona. We went from all these guys being available, and David Njoku in Cleveland. We went from all these guys being available to franchise tag, long-term deal to stay in Arizona, franchise tag for David Njoku. So all of those tight ends are off the market. Then the next wave that I talked about, Mo Alley Cox and CJ Uzama and Evan Ingram, gone. First day of free agency tampering period. CJ Uzama is going to the Jets. Mo Alley Cox back with the Colts, and the tight end for the Giants, Evan Ingram, now going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just like that tight end market's dried up. There's OJ Howard and not really much else that gets you excited. I know the Packers had the tight end that had all those touchdown grabs a couple of years ago. He's intriguing as well. But the tight end market, just like that, I talked about how deep it was. Franchise tag, long-term deal. Boom, it's dried up now. You sign all these other guys, and now it doesn't look the same that it did. So now O.J. Howard is sitting there. We got to hope nobody else is interested in O.J. Howard, and he's just sitting there waiting for someone to offer him something. And we come along and say, hey, O.J., we got a deal for you. We don't have the purple stuff, but we'd love to take a sip of the O.J. We'll see. But that's where we are. I think we're at the mercy of the rest of the league. If somebody decides they want O.J., because you see how the market is shaped up at the tight end position, he's now, to me, the next best thing. I doubt he's available for us now. Had those other tight ends been in the market and available, the Evan Ingram doesn't get a deal today. He gets pushed back because everybody else is going after those other big names. And then you get to Evan Ingram after those guys have gone. But because those guys were already gone, you go straight to Evan Ingram. So I think O.J. Howard is next. So I said all of that to say this. I don't know who we're going to get in free agency because I think essentially we're in a wait and see mode. And I talk about that in the Washington video that I'm going to put out after this podcast episode. So stay tuned for that. Michael White, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Michael White, who writes, look out for Detroit to trade up for 11. We'll see. I mean, again, Detroit isn't in win now mode, so it doesn't make sense for the Lions to start trading up and giving up draft capital. The Lions are looking to stockpile as much draft capital as possible and get as many young, talented football players onto their roster. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Teams that trade up in the draft feel like they're close. So this guy is going to help potentially put us over the top. It's rare that you see a team in a rebuilding phase, as we assume the Detroit Lions are in. It's rare to see those teams trading up unless they're going after the quarterback that they want to build around. But usually those teams stink, so they're already in a position to draft that quarterback, and they're not looking to give up draft capital. They're looking to acquire it. So I highly doubt that Detroit is looking to move back up in the draft. I think Detroit is more so looking to add as many young, talented players onto their roster as they can. So to me, trading up is counterproductive for a team like Detroit. Malachi Malik, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, do we have a second-round pick this year? Yes, we do. We have the Colts second-round pick now. We had our own second-round pick. We traded it with Indianapolis, so we swapped. I think we were the 42nd pick in the draft in the second round, and the Colts were the 47th, I believe. So now we've moved back 5 spots in the second round. So we do own a second-round pick this season. Tony P56, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Tony P56. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Writes, I hear you on cap/draft. You think we need a free agent linebacker / free safety? We can't afford any of the free safeties that are out there. Maybe Tyrann Mathieu, but again, and like I told you, there's a way to dance around the cap. You can front load a guy's contract with a bunch of bonuses and incentives, and then make the base very low, and then push a lot of the guaranteed base salary to the next year. So when you'll have more cap space, that's plausible. But we'll see. I've said this before. I don't envision them pouring any more assets into the secondary. Okay. They spent money on Kendall Fuller already. They spent money on William Jackson III. They would like to have Bobby McCain back. I don't see them spending any more money in the secondary. I think they're going to attack that via the draft. I think if they were going to spend money anywhere, I still think it would be like a value bargain based offensive lineman, like they did with Wes Schweitzer and Cornelius Lucas, guys like that. And they may just save their money for the eventual cuts that come down the road, like we got lucky with Charles Leno Jr. last year and Bobby McCain. We were able to pounce on those opportunities because we had the cap space. Just because you don't spend it now doesn't mean you won't have an opportunity down the road to spend it. There will be some more cuts coming. So you have to be in a position to be able to take advantage of that. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway, that was the last super chat. So let's go ahead and get to our final segment of the show, and that's garbage time. I want to thank everybody that participated in social media maneuvers, and to those who I wasn't able to get to your comments, I already told you, you knew today was going to be a crazy day, and it's really going to be crazy the entire week. So it's going to be heavy on the super chats more likely than not. But thank you guys for participating, and I look forward to chopping it up with you on the next episode. That said, garbage time. Tom Brady back like cook crack. Guess who's Bizak? It's Tom Brady back in the fold. I'm not shocked. I'm really not. And I don't think most of you are. Now, Buccaneers fans are. They really thought he was done. I told you that I thought this was all done by his wife, and that Brady sounded like he was being held hostage. He never wanted to retire. He didn't sound like a man when he retired that was done with football. He sounded like a man that was retiring because his family was more important than football at that time, and his wife wasn't on board. Like, I could have seen a situation or instance where Giselle said, Tom, how long do you plan on playing, honey? And Tom's like, Giselle, like, I'll play until I'm 45, okay? And then I'll quit. And she's like, okay, we'll support you. But at some point, I'd like to get back out there. And we've supported you for long enough. And he's like, okay, 45. Just give me the 45. He gets to 45, and he looks around. And he's like, yo, I'm still killing this shit. And the NFC stinks. I can win another Super Bowl. And I'm not done yet. And everybody he's talked to, from Peyton Manning to Drew Brees to anybody that the game quit them, they didn't quit the game. They're like, bro, if you can still play, keep playing. Do not quit. Because once it's gone, you can't get it back, and there's nothing like it. So he's like taking all of this in, and he's like, Giselle, come on, babe. I'm not done yet. Let me play. Let me get one more year. And she's like, all right, go ahead. And that's she literally gave him clearance. I think that's what happened. He never wanted to stop. So there was a reason. Everything I do is strategically done. There was a reason I saved Brady retiring for garbage time at the end of one of my episodes in a throwaway fashion. Tom Brady retiring deserves gym-dropping status attention, where you spend the first 15 to 20 minutes of the show talking about how illustrious his career was and how we'll never see a guy like that again. I literally did this at the end of an episode on the way out the door. Why? Because I'm like, this dude isn't done. This doesn't feel real to me. This felt like a forced, fabricated retirement. And even his head coach and general manager didn't believe him. Literally, his GM and head coach were at the combine talking about Tom Brady coming back. The door is always open for Tom. It kept saying, if Tom doesn't come back, they knew his ass was coming back. I knew his ass was coming back. You knew his ass was coming back. Buccaneers fans just didn't want to get on that train because they didn't want to psych themselves up for the event that he would come back in, and he didn't. So they kept, and that's what you do. You protect yourself. They kept their guards up, but they, deep down in their hearts, had to know his ass was coming back too. He wasn't done. So all of a sudden now, what looked like the worst division on paper, with no quarterbacks in that division, all of a sudden could end up being one of the best divisions in the NFC. If they get Deshaun Watson into New Orleans or Carolina, Brady's back in Tampa Bay, all of a sudden that division with Matt Ryan still playing in Atlanta, not half bad. Not half bad at all. And looks like if you're in the NFC, you still got to contend with Tampa Bay and Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, because he's back. Never thought he was gone, but he's officially back. And who knows for how long? Like this, people are making it seem like he's back for one more year. He could be back for the next 5 years, 3 years. Who knows? One more thing, and then we're out of here. Did you guys see the guy that paid I'm a card collector, so I'm all over this stuff. Did you see the guy that paid $518,000 for the last touchdown ball thrown by Tom Brady? He did that on Saturday evening. Brady announced he wasn't retiring on Sunday. Ouch. And, oh, by the way, you can't have your money back. Oh, my God. That has to suck. And you can't get your money back, and there's no value. Like if Tom Brady's playing football, the minute he throws another touchdown pass, that football becomes very insignificant. You may be able to sell that ball to somebody for 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50K maybe, because it's still a touchdown ball thrown by Tom Brady. But You paid $518,000 for a ball that you thought would be the significance of Brady never throwing a football in the end zone again and being able to say this was the last time he put a ball in the end zone. Now that ball is going to be rendered, pretty much irrelevant, and you paid $500,000 for it, and you can't get your money back. If that's not the biggest L of the year, I don't know what is. Ouch. I blame Tom Brady for this. You ain't shit for that, Tom. You ain't shit. All right, you ain't shit for that because he could have put a stop to this. Like, hey, look, don't sell that. Don't auction that ball off. I don't know if I'm done yet. Some poor schmuck. Look, if you got $500,000 to spend on a damn football, I don't feel bad for you. I don't feel bad for you in the least a bit. Okay, you got 500. You got $500,000 to blow on a damn football. I can't bring myself to feel sorry for you. But what I can say is, damn, homie, 2 days ago, you was the man, homie. The F happened to you. I know what happened to you. Tom Brady came back and made your $518,000 purchase irrelevant. Damn. As a wise man once told me, got to be more careful. And that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, on the 245th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Brady is back. I'm excited. I've said this. The game is better when guys like Tom Brady exist because he's not the villain that he once was in New England, but he's still a villain. People still love to hate Tom Brady. They don't want to see him win shit. So as far as I'm concerned, the league needs Tom Brady still. No one stepped up to the role of, hey, we can't stand that dude. We don't want to see him win. I think Mahomes, and because of his wife now, Brittany, and his brother, Jackson, I think he's starting to approach that, hey, we don't want to see him win shit. And they just started winning every year. But because they haven't won back-to-back Super Bowls and they didn't play in multiple Super Bowls in a row, they played in 2 in a row. But if they had played in a 3rd or 4th, which they were very capable of, maybe this is different. But they've only played in 2 in a row. And, we saw chinks in the armor with the Chiefs last year. So I think people are softening their stance on Mahomes. But there's only one Tom Brady. There's only one Thomas Brady. And he's now back in the fold. And I'm really excited to see him back in Tampa. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you know what this is. We're going to be covering the free agency, frenzy all week long here on the Louie T Network. So be ready for that on Wednesday. We'll be talking free agency. We'll have a ton more transactions take place tonight into tomorrow. And then free agency will officially open its doors on Wednesday. And that's when the real fun begins. But until then, you guys take care. Have a good one. God bless. And good night.